So before we introduce the event and the project itself, I'm Lucy Hando, Technical Officer at Leaf, and I'll be leading on the project alongside Pilar Pampin, who is Technical Officer on the Business Development team, and Dawn Teverson, who is Project Manager, and we'll all be here to answer any questions at the end of the session. So I'll now pass you over to Pilar, who will explain a bit more about the event and why this project is so significant. Thank you, Pilar.
Hi all, welcome. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here and taking the time to be here. So in this presentation, I'm going to first give a bit of a context about the global situation and where does the project sit in this. Then Lucy will give an introduction of the project, stating more the activities, the timeframes, the desired outcomes. This will be followed by an interactive activity that it will be 2 questions where you will have the opportunity to answer, and we can share thoughts on that. And then this will be followed by a presentation from Duncan Farrington, who is a farmer that has a carbon neutral and plastic neutral leaf demonstration farm. So he'll be speaking to us about his experience of becoming a leaf demonstration farm and carbon neutral too. And then at the end, as Lucy said, we'll have a questions and answer session. So yeah, just put the questions in the chat and we'll answer them at the end. So as a context, greenhouse gases are needed to keep the Earth habitable, as they retain some of the heat energy reflected by Earth and redirect it towards the Earth planet surface again. Without them, the planet wouldn't be habitable by life as we know it today. However, due to human activities, there has been a great increase in greenhouse gases concentration, and this has led to an increase in the heat and the temperatures in the heat retained and the temperatures in the Earth, generating what we call or what is called global warming. Extreme weather events have brought on the risk of food shortages, as well as high prices and the possibility of economic instabilities, not only for the farming enterprises, but also for society in the UK and globally. In the UK agriculture sector, the main emissions are methane from ruminants, nitrous oxide from fertilizers, and carbon dioxide from fuel and energy. And as we see in this slide, for a person born in 2020 compared to someone born in 1960s, the climate disasters that they would have to experience along their lifetime have increased, and this is the effect of climate change. And the increase of CO2 is not only brought by fossil fuels use, but since the dawn of agriculture, the soil carbon loss has been influencing this. And IPCC mentions in a report that in order to avoid the worst effects of or impacts of climate change, it is necessary to transform the agricultural and nature resource systems. This is why lots of different governments and organizations have set different targets. Lucy, can you change the slide, please? Sorry. Different governments and organizations have set different targets to reducing greenhouse gases emissions. In the case of the government in the UK, they set up the target to become net zero by 2050. And then a few, for example, have set up the target of achieving net zero farming by 2040. And in the case of Leaf, we are working towards transforming food and farming by 2031. And this is linked to our 10-year strategy, where it's highlighted that climate change is one of the biggest threats to the planet's health, and farming is in the front line to address this by delivering climate smart positive solutions. And this is why delivering climate smart solutions is one of our of the cross-cutting themes in the strategy and all the work that LEAF does. And building resilient, low footprint farms which are ready for the challenges that might come in the future. It's important not only to ensure food security for the nation, but also to enrich landscapes, protect ecosystems, deliver health and well-being, and mostly to reduce the impacts that these extreme weather events can have. So this project will enable nature-based solutions to reduce greenhouse gases by reducing waste or reducing inputs. And it's very, very important to communicate effectively between stakeholders and farmers, to communicate with consumers and everyone, to know what role are they supposed to be playing in all this. And this is critical to have a positive outcome. This is a bit of context. Now Lucy's going to be telling you more specifically about this project, activities and timeframes and possible outcomes. So Lucy, over to you.
Thank you very much, Pilar. So moving on to the exciting and cutting edge projects that we've been very fortunate to receive funding for by the Co-op Foundation. So using our established model of accelerated learning, 5 farms, one in Wales, one in Scotland, Northern Ireland, overseas and England, will be enabled to implement and monitor improvements to agricultural practice to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to become a net zero carbon LEAF demonstration farm. The project will run for 3 years, with the successful farms launching as LEAF demonstration farms by the end of the 3rd year. The main objectives of the project, so farms are to establish a baseline and implement farms to establish a baseline and implement cycle of monitoring and target setting for continuous improvement. Now this will be through the completion of our online self-assessment, the LEAF Sustainable Farming Review, alongside using a carbon monitoring tool to use as a baseline, and this will be supported by the external consultants. So there'll be, for the 5 farms, 5 external consultants that will be matched to the farm, making sure that the consultants are matched to the most suitable system with their expertise and knowledge. Another objective is that the adoption of integrated farm management as a whole farm site-specific approach is used on farm to drive change and continuous improvement, to implement and demonstrate reduced greenhouse gas emissions, to become part of the journey to net zero. And the final one's to launch as a LEAF demonstration farm to inspire and guide others on the net zero journey. So here are some important timeframes for the project. So please note that the deadline for the applications is the 19th of August at 5 p.m. And if you could please send them to me at lucy.hando@leaf.eco, that would be amazing. Once we have looked through the applications and shortlisted them, we'll then invite farmers to an interview, and those successful farms will be notified in October, with the start of the project in November 2022. So yeah, it is a 3-year project, and the launch of the first net zero farm will be October 2025. So we ask that there is a commitment to becoming a LEAF demonstration farm. Important timeframes. In year 1, we ask that the successful farms, with the support of LEAF, complete the LEAF Sustainable Farming Review, which is our online self-assessment tool. And this will then be repeated each year alongside a carbon monitoring tool to look at how the farms are progressing and be used as a baseline to measure and monitor. Year 2, similar to year 1, but there'll be a bit more involvement with training, on-farm technical workshops, farm visits, and building on baseline assessments to measure improvements. And in year 3, the project will include additional specialist support, technical workshops, preparations for the launch of the first net zero Leaf demo farm. And within the 3 years, Leaf will very much be there to support the farmers, and on the phone, fortnightly, monthly meetings, as well as the external consultant support also. The intended outcomes of the project are that we accelerate and demonstrate your journey to net zero Leaf demonstration farm. You'll have a clear pathway for continuous improvement, and we have to remember that small steps to change are all worthwhile. So it doesn't matter if you've got making the smaller steps on your journey or you're creating big changes. It's all about continuously monitoring your improvements. To form a support network for peer-to-peer learning, which is such a valuable asset in Leaf's eyes, that, you know, it's about guiding others and inspiring your fellow farmers, and as well as wider society. To receive advice from specialists to help you make decisions going forwards, building resilience in your business, and demonstrating to a range of stakeholders your pathway to net zero. The project is an entirely collaborative process where the selection of experts, the design of plans, and execution of actions will be shaped by your involvement. And whilst the cost of experts and training is covered by the project, there is an expectation that you will give your time and commit to a Leaf demonstration farm at the end of the process. We also expect that you'd be willing to share your story to the wider farming community and society via on-farm visits, social media, blogs. So it's again having that presence in the wider farming community. So now, instead of me talking to you, we've got an interactive activity on Slido. So we're asking that you, either on your phone or on your laptop, that you type in the following link, or you can use the QR code. And we're going to be looking at a couple of word clouds and just having an understanding of, you know, what are the main challenges and concerns you have towards achieving net zero on your farm, and the activities and practices you think are most important. So do put any questions you have in the chat if you're having difficulty accessing Slido. But to log in, if you just put the code 2183781 on the PowerPoint screen, it should log you in, and it will come up with the questions which Pila will share.
Let's just wait for a minute until everyone gets in. So quite some answers are already coming through, so I'll share my screen. And if someone hasn't accessed, yes, the details are in the chat, so you can see them there.
Thank you, Pila.
Let's give it a second. So basically the words that come up on a bigger size is the ones that are being mentioned the most. So costs is a big one, and here are some specifications also: the cost of soil sampling, the cost of inputs, and it's something that's well, a big challenge. Another one that's interesting is the impact. Oh, I lost it. Oh, there it is. The impact of land use change, and how can that affect the net zero achievement. Our costs again is clearly the most important one. But all these challenges, it's important to remember that each farmer is going to be partnered with an advisor, that this advisor will be selected depending on what the farmer's challenges are and what activities he wants to focus on, in order to work together to be able to achieve net zero on the farm. So it's really interesting to see how all these different challenges will adapt with different advisors. I think so. Tractor technology has come up as mentioned quite a lot too, which is also really interesting. Do you want to say something else about this one, Lucy, or should I pass to the next one?
Yeah, I was just going to point out the I think sort of psychology of the colleagues. That's a really interesting one, and it's all about, you know, how are we going to shape these practices, and how are we going to engage as a wider farming community to promote these low carbon farming practices. And, you know, becoming part of this project will enable you to sort of understand how to communicate that story. You know, we're providing not only the external consultant support, but also in-house training. How are you going to communicate your story to the wider community, or how are you going to communicate that to staff? So yes, it's really interesting how it's going to be.
Yeah, and also the calculators, the carbon calculators are being used, has also come up in some of these, which is also something to be discussed in the project quite a lot, I think. So thank you for your answers. We'll pass to the next question. What activities and practices do you think are the most important for net zero farming? So if you could please just type some words in.
So with this question, you've got you can look at it in two ways. You've got the activities, which could be you know, more training or more support on the farm for staff, or you could look at it as the farming practices. Some really good comments coming in here. We've got regenerative practices. That's a really important one. And through integrated farm management, it does align with the regenerative farming, and that's what we're trying to promote more of at Leaf. We've got sequestration, solar power, fertilizer application, and we're continually seeing more and more innovations and ways of looking at how we're going to reduce, whether we can reduce fertilizer, or whether we can, you know, incorporate some more cover crops and so forth. So yeah, it's really interesting to see how the future of farming is going to move forward.
The use
Have
of
you any
renewable,
further comments, Peter?
the use of renewable energies is really important to help throughout this journey, I think, and it's came up here. So.
And funding as well, that's quite a big one. And with the project, we'll be able to point you in the direction of the funding that is available, and sort of help you along the process of you know, how to apply for the funding and where to look.
Is someone else typing? Let's wait. See if something else comes up. I think.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for your contributions there. It's really interesting.
Thank you, everyone. Let's see.
I believe we do have Duncan on the call, Pila.
Yeah, that's good.
Hi, Lucy. Hi, Peter.
Hi, thank you very much for joining us today, Duncan.
No, pleasure.
Just introducing Duncan. Duncan is a leaf demonstration farmer and is one of the first plastic and carbon neutral farms. And Duncan's going to guide us through his experiences of becoming a carbon and plastic neutral farm, and then talk a little bit about the leaf demonstration side as well. So again, peer-to-peer learning. Thank you very much, Duncan.
Thank you very much. I'd like to share my screen. It says host has disabled participant screen sharing, or if you want, you can do the slides and I'll ask you to move on.
I think Lucy can give you access to that.
There you go, I've made you a co-host.
Oh, brilliant.
Apologies
Great.
for that.
No, let's see if I can find it. Just give me a second and I'll get there. Boom, boom, boom. Slideshow. I'm trying to get, what can you see? Can you see all of my slides, or can you see, oh, wait a minute, sorry.
We can
From
see
the
all
beginning.
slides.
Right, there we are. Hopefully,
There.
can you see that?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much. Well, I'm going to try and whiz through in the next 5 or 10 minutes a presentation here, and then obviously if you we can do questions after. And I came in and I watched the Slido there, and I found that very interesting with the comments coming through, and is nothing new that I haven't heard before on that. So hopefully we can answer some of the questions. So just to introduce myself, I'm Duncan Farrington. Farmer in Northamptonshire, leaf demonstration farmer, and also the founder of Farrington Oils, and we produce the brand Farrington's Mellow Yellow, which we grow, press and bottle on the farm, and we also, it's from rapeseed, and we buy rapeseed from other leaf mart farms as well. We've got lots of awards we've gained over the years, and including we were the world's first food company to be certified both carbon and plastic neutral back in 2019. And then in 2021, we got a Queen's Award for Enterprise for Sustainable Development. So we're very proud of what we're doing. And this came about from my interest right from the early days of joining Leaf, becoming a demonstration farmer and just trying to do things better. So that's where we are in the country. We're a pretty standard arable farm, a Hanslope series clay. So it's a very high clay content soil and average rainfall between 550 and 600 millimeters a year of rain, although a lot less than that this year. We won't do the leaf wheel because you all know about that. And just how have we already achieved neutrality? Well, we were the first to actually achieve it. And the reason I was very keen to be a certified carbon neutral business is because, first of all, I've been doing the Leaf Mart work for many years, and through Leaf Mart, we're gaining lots of data on our energy use, electricity, diesel, fertilizer, and all these things. And we do this every year. And we supply consumers and supermarkets and restaurants our products. And in the last few years, people have been really getting interested in the whole carbon story. So I just wanted to see where we sit on that line of how good or bad we were. And I know I just heard you talking, lots of different tools out there to measure carbon, and they aren't necessarily certifiable and through trusted or certified bodies. It's not that they're bad, it's just that everyone's learning, and depending what methodology and what algorithms are being used, we're coming up with different results. So we looked around and we found an organization working with the United Nations, And we chose that one and we went with it because then to actually get a piece of paper and a certificate, which is behind me on the wall, saying we are certified as carbon neutral from the UN, I think is a pretty good start. So how have we achieved it? We've used things like solar panels on the factory and the grain store roofs. When I first put them in, they were doing 50% of our electricity needs, but now Farrington Oils has continued to grow. It's serving 30% of our electricity needs, but it's still a big chunk out of it. And the farm, in the first year we did it, the farm and the oil business was giving net carbon emissions of 340 tonnes a year. Now, what we've done with that, we have offset that. And people might say, well, that's greenwashing, because we've offset it with a tree planting scheme in Uruguay in South America. What I would like to do long term is to be able to offset it on our farm or on UK farms or UK businesses. And you may be surprised to know that we've achieved our carbon neutrality, and those carbon emissions we had doesn't even take the soil into account. So the farming industry, rightly so, very interested in what we're doing under our feet and with the soils that we grow our crops and our livestock on. But at the moment, there is no internationally accepted, verified and certified method of working out what soils are doing and adding to the carbon neutrality story. So all of our work has been done without even looking at, in my mind, the most important asset. I've just got a slide here saying that potentially if farmers globally farmed in a regenerative way, there is a potential to remove between 10 and 30% of the global CO2 emissions. And to give that an idea, if we could get soils from 1 to 3% carbon content globally, that could take 1 trillion tonnes of carbon out of the atmosphere, or bringing it down to pre-industrial levels. So the soil has huge potential to be a real game changer in carbon emissions. And this video here is a picture of me walking across my experimental field. I've been looking at this field for over 20 years, taking soil analysis. This year, for example, we grew a crop of wheat on that field. We have used 106 kilograms of nitrogen as opposed to farm practice of double that amount. And we did some trials and it has had a lower yield, but only between 5 and 10% with a 50% reduction in synthetic nitrogen. I'm not saying it's the answer because the loss in yield has given us a lower margin, but these are the sorts of things we're looking at. Now, on that field, I've got a graph here, and from the soil analysis I've done right from 2002, I've been interested in two things: the soil organic matter and also the cation exchange capacity. And everyone gets worried about a figure. Now, my clay soil is going to have a higher figure than if you were growing vegetables on a sandy soil, for example. So don't worry about the figure and don't take one point in time, but look at the trends over time. So my first take-home message would be start testing your soils now, but do it at the same time every year and do it over a period of years. And what you can see on that, the orange line shows that the soil organic content on our farm on that field over a 20-year period has gone up 84%. Now, in my mind, that is a huge amount. At the same time, the cation exchange capacity has gone up a little bit, and think of that as a nutrition of the soil. So the soil, it's not only storing carbon from carbon sequestration, it's becoming more nutritious as well. That's great, but what does that mean? But in layman's terms, that one field is absorbing enough carbon dioxide every year to offset the equivalent emissions from around 200, and I've put down here Mellow Yellow Minis because that's the company car we have, but 200 medium-sized cars off UK roads every year. Now, if that field was multiplied on our whole farm, and we're a medium-sized arable farm in Northamptonshire, we have the potential to offset the emissions for around 2,700 cars off UK roads each year. These are big figures that the agricultural industry has the potential to do. So after becoming carbon neutral, but realizing that at the moment, people or the certifiers are just not looking at soil because it's such an unknown, I was then approached to join an organization called AgriCapture CO2. Now, this is a research project. It's a European-wide research project, and I joined it, and I got Leaf to join it as well. So Leaf are in there. We're all in working together, and we're trying to find an internationally accepted methodology, an internationally certifiable and verifiable way of measuring soil carbon content, and creating a tool for guide farmers internationally, and also something at the end of the day to give farmers that superhero power to actually be part of the solution. And I saw on the Slido, several of the comments were about cost, and the whole idea of agri-capture, because soil sampling is very expensive, but they are looking at, or we're looking at, using ground truth in soil samples, but rather than having to do them over the whole farm on a regular basis, just using 1 or 2 data points, and then mixing this with a fusion of Earth observation. So we're looking at using, or we are using satellite data, and the satellite images we're using are a factor of 10 times better than they were. And we can get very accurate data. So there's some very clever people involved in the project to get this to work. And it is a 3-year project. We're halfway through, and I'm the UK case study, and I'm finding it absolutely fascinating what results we're bringing up. But the idea is, first of all, to explore what we can do and what regenerative and sustainable agriculture looks like, and then support the farmers on the ground to do it, and to give them the confidence with a validated method of measuring the carbon. And at the end of it, if we have something quantifiable, and that could potentially become an income stream for agriculture. And if we can do it on an international scale, it literally does have scale that can change a lot of things. So I'll just whiz through very quickly what we do on our farm. So I've got some experiences here. So it's a standard sort of 0-till and minimum till farm. We've got a picture of rapeseed there planted with a companion crop, and some wheat planted into, and the tractors there planting wheat into cover crops and catch crops. And there's a crop of wheat that was grown after a summer cover crop, and it is a fantastic crop of wheat. This is a couple of years ago, so that's all very good, and it's the sort of the pictures you see in the farming press. I've put in here livestock as a bad thing. Now, livestock, I think, are crucial for part of a successful regenerative farming, but on our heavy soil, I tried grazing sheep, and we get someone else to bring his sheep in and graze the sheep on the cover crops over the winter. And it's absolutely fine when the ground is frosty and hard, but on clay soil, when it isn't hard, the sheep poach the ground. And unless you do mob grazing, it's something I say to do with caution, but there is a potential there. So it's not that livestock are bad, it's the farmer's ability and time and skills to actually manage how you do it. And then is the downright ugly. And I've been doing this for an awful long time, but this is a picture of 2 years ago. And we had, if you remember, I know it's very dry now, but we had 2 autumns in succession incredibly wet. And that was a shot after I had drilled a field with spring barley. The ground was just drying out enough to plant the seed. And then we had more rain on it, and on wet clay soil that's been driven over with a heavy drill, and then even more rain on top. That's never going to grow a good crop, and it was terrible. So this is where this project with the Leaf and the support of advisors, it's a case of everyone learning from mistakes and trying to improve it. So again, it comes with a health warning maybe. So be prepared to help nature. So I'm not evangelical about not cultivating. Sometimes we need to put air in the ground, and we use a cultivator, and there we are with a good crop of beans after the soil's been moved, and I cultivate about 1/5 of the ground each year. And also it's a whole farm approach. So it's not just about what you're doing in the middle of the field, it's what you do around the edge. So back in 1997, we farmed right up to the hedge. We had planted a hedge next to a ditch, which is great, but now we're giving a bit more space to nature. So there's wildflower strips, and there's going to be more and more of this sort of thing on our farm and on other farms around the country. And there's some examples of some, the wildflowers and pretty flowers and everything else growing healthily. And we've got orchids and bumblebees and all sorts of bits and pieces that the general public think farming should be doing. So where do I think farming will go in the next few years? Well, first of all, I think we're going to get our income from a pick and mix type scenario. So we're going to still get the income, and it might be the main, and in some cases the only income from the crops we grow or the livestock we produce on our farm. So that's from the actual produce we grow. There will also be income from public money for public goods, whether that's through elms and wildlife and biodiversity and rewilding and other methods and things that policymakers are going to try and get us to do. There is a potential to get income from carbon trading, and that could be a combination of both public and privately funded. Obviously, at the moment, I would say just be cautious on that until you make sure you're working with trusted people and you aren't selling your children's inheritance or grandchildren's inheritance as well. And then finally, this one won't be for everyone, but potential income from ecotourism. And, you know, I can think of a couple of farms that have decided actually, why don't we turn the whole farm or part of the farm over to areas, and we can get paying public to come in and see what we're doing with the trees or the wild mammals or the rare orchids or the whatever it may be. So I do see agriculture in the UK becoming, and it might be that you have a mixture of all of those or maybe one or two of those things. And I do have a genuine passion and interest in making it work, and I'm sure it will work. And again, going back to the Slido, some of the biggest issues and are synthetic nitrogen fertilizer, and I think we have to find methods in the future. And on our carbon results from our energy monitoring that we do with Leaf, our biggest pollutants are fossil fuels in the red diesel in the tractors to go up and down the land, and the synthetic nitrogen. So they are two key things. So anything we can do to work on that is great. So I'm trying to do that now because it interests me and I want to do it. I'm convinced it's going to create future income streams. It's not all about adding cost, it's actually adding potential income as well. So it's not all negative. There could be some great positives come out of this. And we're all going to have to do it soon. So I'd rather be at the front of the queue, learning and doing it now, rather than wait until we're pushed and challenged to do it later. Because if you wait for policy is never going to be as good as leading the way yourself. And at the end of the day, it is the right thing to do for us and our planet and for our future generations. So I think, as well as a financial, I think we have a moral requirement to do these things. So I don't know how long I've gone on for, but yeah, I think that's it. So shall I go back to, I'll stop screen sharing.
Thank you very much for that insightful presentation, Duncan. It's really good to hear about your experiences of you know, working with agriculture and, you know, the good, the bad and the ugly, like you say. There's always challenges along the way, and it's how we combat those with the help of specialist advice. And you know, farmers will make mistakes along the way, but it's how you learn from that and guide each other and inspire others. And I was just wondering whether you had a couple of minutes just to explain about Leaf Demonstration Farm and your experiences on that side.
Yeah, absolutely. So I became a demonstration farmer, I think, I did in 2003. So I joined Leaf 10 years before that, just because I thought it sounded good and believed in it. And I didn't know where it would go and what opportunities it would bring. And things, it's not always, I say when I give talks, especially to students, don't always do things just because you think you're going to make money of it. Do things that interest you and you're passionate about. And Leaf and sustainable farming are certainly up there with me. So I became a demonstration farm, and we host school visits, we host interest groups, you know, Women's Institute it might be, or local nature groups and what have you. And I've also had the privilege, we've had several policy makers. We've had, in fact, probably the biggest one we had was the Minister of Agriculture for the People's Republic of China that came to look at that field we do all the work on. So Leaf has, and being a demonstration farmer, has given me, first of all, it's given me training and how to communicate with the general public, which is a good thing to have on your CV and just general good stuff to have in your business toolbox anyway. And it's I really enjoyed sharing experiences with the public and other farmers, and between doing all of that, it's not a one-way thing. I learn from other farmers and policymakers coming and seeing me just as much, or maybe more, than they learn from me. So I'd highly recommend it.
Thank you very much, Duncan. I'm just aware of time, and there's a few questions for you in the chat box. A question here, how did you find out how much carbon is offset per tree?
I didn't do that. This is where it comes down to trust. So the organisation that worked with the United Nations, the UN have actually subsidised, very heavily subsidised the financial payment we've had to make to offset this this carbon emission. I don't know what a tree does. I remember doing some work quite a while ago on our farm, and actually when you look, active agricultural land in our climate is better at absorbing carbon than just general woodland. So woodland is great, hedges are great, wildflower margins are great, but so is good farming practice. But no, I left that to the people doing the modelling, and they just told me, right, your offset is 340 tonnes, and this is how much money you've got to pay.
Thank you, Duncan. And another comment here, Soil Capital trades carbon credits and from changes in practice and keeps them within the agricultural supply chain. Have you any thoughts on that, Duncan? Yeah, absolutely fine. I'm sure on this call there's going to be several people that maybe trade carbon, or there might be farmers that have already sold carbon. Yeah, go with it, but make sure from a farming perspective you are very you're making sure you're not selling. For example, my graph I've shown, it might show that we've increased carbon, and on that analogy you might say it's going to absorb this much carbon over the next 10 years, and you can sell that. And then in 10 years time, when someone comes back to test it and it finds that it's only absorbed half or a percentage of what you thought it was, you've got to make sure that you're ready for that and you've got the money ready to give back. But the whole idea of these having a certified, verifiable methodology that's internationally accepted is that it is safeguarded. And yeah, definitely keep it within the agricultural sector. What we do not want is financiers coming along and taking a big cut out of it and then make all the money and the farmers not make the money. But don't let that put you off. Talk to people, sign up to things like, you know, this whole thing today with the Leaf Net Zero thing is an absolutely fantastic opportunity to learn. But my one caution is don't rush into doing anything now. I'm sure someone else would be on the call and say, well, actually, I've done it and I've found it very successful and I've got some money in the bank, and that's great. Well, wonderful. But I would just caution. Thank you. And have you got time for one more, Duncan?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much. So what advice would you give to a fellow farmer who's starting out on their journey to net zero? Join Leaf, first of all, you could say, and do the IFM work and the Sustainable Farming Review. You might want to go to events and read the magazines, and obviously the internet's great, but also sign up to AgriCapture CO2, because that's all about going on a journey. But again, it's a research project. It hasn't got a product at the moment. And I know with myself and Leaf and other UK organisations that are involved in it, we are conscious that there isn't a product to sell at the moment, whereas other organisations have got a product, but we aren't necessarily going to be the first in the race. But we're making sure that it's going to be, I keep saying it, it's going to be internationally certified and verified, which is the most important thing. So it's not necessarily about getting the money today, but it's making sure that you're set up for the next 5, 10 and 25 years. Thank you, that's a very good answer. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us, Duncan. I hope that's been helpful for everyone to hear more from one of our Leaf demonstration farmers. So thank you very much for joining us. I'm aware that you can stay on to the end of the call if you'd wish to, but you might be have a busy day on. So
Well, no, we were hoping to go combining, but I'm waiting for a lorry load of beans to go, and until they're gone, I can't do anything. So I'll carry on if you like.
Okay.
I'll enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now it was just looking at any questions and answers that everyone has for the project itself. There is one in the chat I saw. Will we be using one carbon footprinting tool across all farms or a number of different ones depending on the enterprises on or individual farms? Pila, do you want to answer that one?
Yes, sure. So that's a very good question. So we believe that the most important thing is to have consistency within each farm, to be able to compare how each farm evolves through the 3 years throughout the whole project. So the idea would be each farm to have its own carbon footprint tool. However, we know it's, as you said, as the question kind of mentions, different enterprises maybe have some carbon footprints that can adapt better to each system. So we don't have as a restriction that they have to be all the same throughout all farms. I don't know if you want to add something else. Oh.
Thank you, Pila. If anyone does have any more questions, do put them in the chat or raise your hands if you'd like to ask anything in particular. Or if anyone has any comments, they can put in the chat. We have some questions that were emailed through. So how much advice will we get on the project as farmers? Dawn, did you want to introduce yourself and answer that one? Thank you.
Hi. So what advice will we get? So the idea is that everything is bespoke for your individual farm. We aim to have a range of different farm types across the project. So as well as having one farm in England, one in Scotland, one in Wales, one in Northern Ireland and overseas, the idea is to have a range of different types of enterprises. As Pilar has said, we won't need to have one carbon tool across everyone. It's a case of each individual farm benchmarking against themselves and having the most appropriate advice and journey for themselves. So the advice will be bespoke. It depends what the individual farmers want. So we've got several consultants lined up, and it depends on the requirements of the individual farmers as to who we pair them off with. So what's best suited for the business. So we'll also have ongoing telephone support and meetings from Leaf. This is a two-way peer-to-peer learning experience. We'll have online group individual meetings and hopefully meetings in the field as well. And it will be a good opportunity to participate in training. We'll have training, as was mentioned by Duncan, on speak out training and a whole range of different activities appropriate not only to net zero, but appropriate to becoming a leaf demonstration farm.
Thank you, Dawn. And another one here, what about protected cropping? How relevant do you think this is for the project and Leaf in general is towards the protected sector?
Is that for me as well?
Yes, please.
Okay. So protected cropping, by that we mean glass houses, polytunnels, that kind of thing. So yes, definitely these protected is by definition going to be quite different to different types of on-farm cropping, and it will have its own peculiarities, call them problems, call them challenges. And this is why we have a range of different advisors who will have that individual expertise, so we can match up the farmers with, depending on their requirements, with the advisors who can come up with the information that will help in that process of continuous improvement.
Thanks for that, Dawn. And just another one while I received by email as what are the benefits of the project for the farmers?
So the benefits for the farmers is achieving net zero ultimately, but rather than doing it by yourself, it's about the journey, doing it with help and support of LEAF, with advisors, but also with fellow and like-minded farmers. So that should be really, really interesting. It's becoming part of the solution to climate change. It's that interaction with all the different parts of the supply chain and with the public. It's an opportunity to share your knowledge with, as I say, all these different actors and farmers on the same journey. As Duncan said, it's better to be at the forefront, doing it how you want, because you want to do it with support, rather than when we cajoled into it, perhaps people who aren't at that cutting edge. There will be a huge range of different opportunities to engage with wider society, and you know, the ultimate aim is to become a LEAF demonstration farm, as you've heard from Duncan. That opens a whole range of different possibilities and activities, and I'm sure if you've got more in-depth questions about that, either we can answer them or Duncan will be happy to share.
Lucy, you're on mute. Lucy, we cannot hear you.
Hi Lucy, you just need to come off mute.
Apologies for that. I was just
We all do that.
just to say if there are any further questions or comments about net zero farming, or any questions about the project. We do have one through. The demonstration farms need to become net zero by 2025 if they decide to join the incentive. 3 years' time would be challenging. So yeah, within the project, we asked that the LEAF demonstration farms will be launched at the end of October 2025, and then there is a commitment to give your time and commit to that LEAF demonstration farm for a period of 3 years, just because we want to get the most out of it and, you know, showcase the amazing work that farms are doing. But we can send further details about this over email. So do give Pilar or myself an email and we'll be able to send more details. And another question, what would be the definition of net zero for this project? All scopes, including procurement, etc. I pass that one to you, Dawn.
This is one that we will have to be learning a bit together about, and it's as I say, the process of going through this experience together. We will be looking at the different scopes in the context of what is practical, and this is why this is grounded in peer-to-peer learning and what's possible. It may be that some things aren't practical. And that's also a positive output. Again, it's about the journey and showcasing what's possible to other people within the industry. Yeah, so really looking forward to working with everyone and that experience.
Thank you very much, Dawn. I'll hand it over, unless there are any other questions, I'll hand it over to Pilar now to wrap up. Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for your time and for your questions and your input in the interactive activity in the Slido. On the screen, you can see Lucy and my mobile phones and email. So if you have any further questions, comments, or whatever, just call us or email us and we'll be able to help you. And please remember that the application deadline is on the 19th of August at 5 p.m. So the application is sent to Lucy. So if you could send that before the deadline, it would be great. And this will be recorded, as we already said it, so it would be available if you want to rewatch it or share it with someone that you think might be interested. So we will be sending that through. Thank you for everyone.